Welcome. I'm here with Josh, the founder of Cosmo, a health and wellness brand, and they have some really cool stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what got you to start Cosmo?
Yeah, yeah. You want the long story or the short one?
It's kind of like the quick story.
Let's give you the quick one. Okay, so my background has been in business through and through. I've started a couple things.
Yeah.
Nothing immense success. Also worked in different jobs in the past, mostly in biz dev and marketing. And I always had a passion for health and wellness due to my own personal journey through
Yeah.
it, which we can get into.
Just through personal healing and going through a lot of
Yeah, a
personal.
lot of personal healing that I
Yeah.
went through, and a lot of the brand is rooted in a lot of alternative modalities of medicine. And
Which is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because now, Western medicine, right? It's all petroleum based. Take these pills and they treat the symptom.
yeah,
To whereas Eastern medicine, it's such a really holistic view of the human body, but we don't learn any of it. So most people are really ignorant on, how you can heal naturally through these
Yeah.
modalities, which it sounds like that's the journey that you went on for yourself, right?
yeah, that is the journey. You just opened up a can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the journey I went on. I was sick for as long as I can remember. I don't like to label it like that because
Yeah.
you don't want to victimize. You ever seen that video with the cup of mud and they say what healing is and what people think healing is, and they just dump the mud out, and then it says what healing really is, and it's just water constantly pouring into it until
Yeah.
the water clears. That's what healing is. It's clearing the mud. It doesn't just happen with the snap of your fingers. It's a journey. I definitely went through that journey. I think in Western culture we seek quick fixes. But if you constantly label yourself as sick, you're never going to get better.
Absolutely.
So I don't like to say that, but yes, I've been sick for a while. I had epilepsy as a child, and I was put on medication at a young age. Also diagnosed with ADHD really young and put on Adderall at like age 8. I didn't even realize till I
Wow.
got older that I
Yeah.
was having hangovers. It
Oh my
like
God.
blows my mind. I would like get out of school at 3, but around 2 p.m. I would have these grueling headaches, and I was just told drink water, and I'm
Yeah.
like I'm just gulping down water, and
With your Lunchables
Yeah.
and
Oh,
Red
yeah,
40 and,
oh yeah, Subway lunches,
Yeah.
all that crap. But yeah, and I think that over time
So did you heal that epilepsy?
So basically we found out that it was viral. It
Wow.
may have come from a guinea pig that I had as a kid that bit me. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really an interesting story. We never did proper testing or got proper testing to figure it out.
Yeah.
But my mom did significant research at the time and found out or came to conclude that it was viral, because epilepsy is not a quote unquote curable disease
Yeah, right.
in today's day and age. At least that we don't know any cure for it. So yeah, I somehow cured it. They just one day they tried to do all the CT
So a
scans.
miracle in modern
yeah.
medicine.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a
Could write
miracle
it
in
off.
Waterson. Yeah,
Didn't happen.
I remember my neurologist wanted to put me on do some surgical operation,
Wow.
and my dad was like, "Hell no, that's not gonna happen."
I've heard of so many stories where doctors and stuff, especially in America, they want to do this surgery, this invasive surgery, or put you on this whole host of pills.
Yeah, man.
And then people go and stand in the grass
Yeah.
and get some sunlight and drink some clean spring water and quit drinking Monster, and they
Yeah.
heal.
Yeah, it's just it's just the basics, I think we are so out of touch with the basics. Like we have all these LED lights in our faces all
Yeah.
day long. We're sitting in an enclosed.
Quick shout out to Raw Optics. If you've
Oh,
heard
yeah.
of these guys.
I've heard of them. They're
Matt, the
doing some
founder,
crazy
really awesome guy, but he also went through a similar health journey, super sick, and he had to go all the way to the light, basically, and
Wow.
realize that, whoa, I'm getting sick from LED lights past 6 p.m., and that was his big thing that, shifted his health,
Really?
hence his passion for the brand.
So what was he going through? I'm just curious.
I think it was a whole host of, autoimmune issues. I'm not sure exactly, but it was some pretty bad stuff, and he had a rough time healing, and then he learned I think light therapy and started
incredible.
getting into that,
It's incredible.
which no one, right? If you're sick or ill, they'll just put you on pills nowadays instead of put you in a better environment.
Yeah, man. I think it's really interesting. I mean, to go on a little tangent here. the medical industry as a whole, everything in America is driven by capitalism and capitalist mindset, and that's
Yeah.
both good and bad.
Yeah.
We're lucky to be able to shoot for the stars and actually reach it in US, and a lot of people don't have that
Yeah, not
opportunity.
that it's a bad thing at all, but a
No.
lot of people take capitalism and they're not good people.
Yes, exactly. They take advantage of the system. And that's a lot of what's going on in our government. It's been going on for decades now.
Yeah.
We have already uncovered a lot of issues with our food system. Everyone, even 10 years ago, saw Food Inc. We know what's going
Yeah.
on with Roundup in our food system and how bad that is, glyphosate. And
But
stuff
even
like that.
Food Inc., that's a Netflix show, right? So
No, it
there's
was actually produced by a separate, I don't know who it was, a separate
acquired
production
it?
company, and then Netflix acquired the rights.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just heard that there's quite some subtle programming. Isn't that one that turns people into vegans often?
It might
Food Inc.
actually. Yeah, it might because it's so grotesque what they do.
Yeah.
It's disgusting what they do to the animals
Yeah.
that like it can turn you off
Yeah.
from like an animal rights perspective. I can resonate with that, but yeah, it can lead to that, and I understand that, but it's more trying to just like debunk what's going on in our food system.
Absolutely.
But the same thing is happening in our medical system. So
So back to your story, how
Yeah.
did you really heal yourself? I mean, that's
Yeah.
crazy that you cured yourself of an incurable disease.
yeah, well, it wasn't even that. It's, that was my epilepsy was natural. I still don't know. My body's natural ability, just
Mhm.
over time. I'm a child. My body's maturing. Like, this is, remember, like age 8. But then when I got older, I was also taking Adderall. And you have to understand that can cause severe side effects, especially gastrointestinal stuff.
Yeah.
I got really into fitness around age 15. My best friend got me into CrossFit, and I
Yeah.
loved the endorphin rush from that. And I think that's sort of when my body started detoxing,
Yeah.
because then I started developing severe acne.
Mm.
And still being in that medical paradigm mindset, I would have these acne like bumps on my face or on my
Wow.
forehead that would cause such bad headaches. Like, I kid you not, I couldn't
Oh.
work. It was really painful. So there was some detox going on, and I was not recognizing it there then. And stupidly, I went to the dermatologist, and of course, what do they sell you? Another drug. So out of desperation, I took Accutane. That was probably the worst decision I could have done, because that messed my system up even more. And I'm still continuing on this health journey. I finished Accutane, acne's gone, but I started developing severe gut issues, like late at night, just ultra gassy, like can't sleep, uncomfortable, like honestly uncomfortable in crowds sometimes. It was that bad. And I would be eating clean food, and it's like, I'm so healthy. How is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And I still didn't have any I didn't have any angle into the alternative care world yet.
Yeah.
So not knowing yet what to do, I go to a gastroenterologist. That's our medical system. It failed me so many times, and I took one more risk. I'm starting to build knowledge. I'm in college. I was studying entrepreneurship, but even then I was pursuing some health app.
Yeah.
And I went to a gastroenterologist after, I kid you not, 10 tests that they made me do. They diagnosed me with something called SIBO, which I think is just the predecessor to what I may have been going through. It's really just IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. SIBO is simple intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah.
It's very common today, actually, in a lot of Americans. A lot of brands
Big time.
talk about it and create supplement regimens and diets for it. Shout out to all of them.
Yeah.
But back then there wasn't much on it, and the doctor threw antibiotics down my throat, and it's like,
Which
"Here,
also
you need..."
kills all the good bacteria.
Yes, and I knew that, and I said, why are you giving me antibiotics? And he said, unfortunately, with SIBO, you need to kill everything and just start from scratch. And I started researching.
AKA, this is what I was taught in the books, handed
Yep.
to me, promoted by Big Pharma, and
Yep.
this is, what I'm paid to push on.
Exactly. And so I did it because I was desperate. I'm in college. I don't have a lot of free time. I just want to get through my senior year. So I took the dose, and he threw this diet pamphlet down on the table and said, "Follow this." And I'm like, "What is this?" He goes, "It's the low FODMAP diet. It's now a common diet. It's about avoiding all the different kinds of sugars and also a lot of carbs." But back then I was like, "What is this?" And he just said, you can read about it on Google. It was just very impersonal.
Yeah.
It was just very salesy. That's our medical system.
Yeah.
And I started researching a little bit, and I talked to people who were in med school and came to find out that MDs of any kind are required to study only a minimum of 25 hours of nutrition.
That was you that said that. I remember I was about to
Yeah.
bring it up when you were talking about, 25 hours of nutrition. You don't really know that much over 25 hours of study, but yet now
No.
you're an expert that hundreds of people will
Yeah.
come to you throughout the
Yeah.
months, and you got to give them, well, whatever you're told to give
Yeah.
them.
You can make an argument for the 20-hour rule, and a lot of people can learn a lot, but I don't think when you're studying 10,000 plus hours of medical
And something as complex
Yeah.
as, nutrition.
as nutrition,
and
exactly. You're not
human
going to
body.
build that knowledge base, and then it's also going to just get clouded by everything else you're learning,
Yep.
which clearly as a gastroenterologist,
Yeah.
it did get clouded. And so I was shocked by that, and just like perplexed at how a GI, a gut doctor, doesn't know what you're putting in and what's coming out
Yeah.
of your body. So that set me on a path, and found out later that my mom had been going to an acupuncturist a couple times, and I said I want to see her. So my mom connected me. I went to her, and my world changed the minute I walked in that door. My life changed.
Wow.
She First off, it was just so perplexing. She went and just took my pulses
Mm.
and asked me a bunch of questions and did a treatment on me, and I instantly felt better.
Whoa.
It was pretty crazy.
What
And I
was
was
the
like,
treatment?
needling, acupuncture.
Okay.
I don't know the actual treatment. I can't
Yeah.
tell you, but it was definitely focused on my gut. And she also told me that day, I remember, she said, your issues, your disease is emotional.
Mm.
And I was so dismissive, like,
As
no
most of them
way.
are, yeah. Everyone says no.
Yeah, everyone says no. But I continued going. And then the next session, she sat down with me for an hour, kept looking at my pulses, and said, this is the diet you're going to follow. And she started explaining, these foods are warming, these foods are cooling. Your body composition is generally warm, so you want to avoid a lot of warm foods. This was at the time. You want to avoid these kinds of foods because they require a lot of effort for your spleen to break down. I was like, oh, wow, just soaking in all the knowledge. Fast forward about 6 years following her protocols, diet, really strict diet and lifestyle
Yeah.
changes I made, and following her herbs, I cured myself. And I
Wow.
started reintroducing all the foods and stuff back into my diet and had no issues. It was pretty
Wow.
crazy.
That's
So,
an amazing story.
yeah. So I realized that alternative care, and I started dabbling in other things. I dabbled a little bit in Ayurveda. I got a treatment once,
Nice.
and I've talked to homeopathists. I've spoken with naturopaths. A lot of them are all rooted in similar trains of thoughts. They actually all come from similar roots.
Yeah.
Ayurveda is the most ancient and traditional medicine, and TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, took a lot of knowledge from Ayurveda in Silk Road
Mm.
back centuries ago.
Way back when.
Yeah, way back when. And TCM built an encyclopedia of knowledge. And actually, I was just talking to Key Reddiff,
Yeah.
and he was telling me how even TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is the more modernized version of Chinese medicine. There is a more traditional, classical Chinese medicine that when it was brought to the West, I think in the 50s, they wanted to simplify it for the American audience and
Yeah.
not make it so complicated.
Mm.
And that really amazed me, but doesn't surprise me.
Absolutely.
So
And if you look into it at the time, I mean, the Rockefellers took over the entire health care industry,
yeah.
the education industry. Most people don't know the General Education Board is not a government program. It's a private business built by, those same people that took all the alternative health care out of the U.S.
Yeah.
and just scrapped it and
yeah,
honestly killed off people that were practicing that. It was silenced. Their speech was silenced. And, there were all these ancient modalities to heal yourself, but they were taken from us
yeah.
somewhere along the
So
line.
that's a really interesting point you bring up. Two things. First off, the Rockefeller Foundation is the actual company, the organization where the information of classical Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese medicine was exchanged to us. So the leaders in the traditional Chinese medicine world came to the Rockefeller, whoever the founders, I
Yeah.
forgot their names, John D. Rockefeller,
Yep.
and passed the information down and simplified it and dumbed it down. So
Wow.
that's one thing really interesting. Second thing that's really interesting is when you look at the history of our medical system in this country, it started from corruption from the get-go. So in the late 1800s, everything was practiced, all the
Yeah.
traditional modalities. There wasn't really rhyme or reason, and information was not clearly exchanged. There were problems with it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of woo-woo back then, for sure.
Absolutely.
The American medical Association was formed to standardize medical care, standardize it in institutions, standardize it in practices, and eventually when private insurance was formed, also standardize what would be covered under insurance and what wouldn't. And in
Which is a big thing right there.
it was.
Keep going.
Yeah, it was. Hold on to that because this
Yeah.
is a really important history to know.
Yeah.
So in 1910, this guy Abraham Flexner, I don't know his background, he
I've heard of
came
him.
out with a report. It was, I mean, now it's just called the Flexner Report, and basically it claimed that any medical modality that is not rooted in science or does not have scientific proof to it, it should be dismissed in our medical association. So it's dismissed from all institutions from teaching. It's dismissed in our insurance, which wasn't formed yet, but it was basically just banned. Okay, that report really changed everything, and basically the repercussions we're now feeling. The FDA was created because there was corruption with food, and like there was some big disease that was in some packaging, and the FDA needed to standardize it.
And then
And
they also took over the food supply.
then they
which is
took
why
over the
everyone's
food
so
supply
sick,
chain.
Right?
Yep.
You give them poison, and
Yep.
then once they get sick, you give them more poison, and you give them keep
Exactly.
this whole cyclical thing, which is why Americans are some of the sickest people in the world.
Exactly, man. And then what is it? We have the FDA that was formed. We have the CDC at some point.
Yeah, the CDC. Thank those guys. I mean, how many lives did they save?
Oh yeah.
Or
well,
not?
they did and didn't.
I'm just joking.
No,
I mean,
they-
that's kind of like really horrible what we went through the past few years, and I
It
think
is.
people are just now waking up to it.
It is. It is. Not even talking about now. I forgot what disease it was that was spreading at the time, but basically our entire medical system became focused on chronic, or not on chronic, on what's the word? On diseases that can spread really quickly.
Viral,
Viral? No, what was COVID? It's very
contagious.
Contagious.
Yeah.
On contagious disease. And that was where our medical institutions started focusing on. And it sort of just forgot about the preventative good stuff.
Yeah.
And going back to the Flexner report, the problem was at the time, alternative care was not rooted in science, unfortunately, and there wasn't science to prove it, and it was very personalized. It
Yeah.
was my acupuncturist personalized the regimen for me. But today, with wearables and with the amount of data that we have, you can actually prove the efficacy of these.
Yeah.
And someone needs to do it. That's sort of what I'm trying to do with Cosmo.
Exactly, which is huge. And I guess that does bring us into your story. We need another 2 hours to really dive into this because we're dismantling a lot of the reasons why most people are so sick. And yeah, I mean, on that vein, you created Cosmo, which is kind of goes on cupping, right? And it's a very ancient practice.
Yes, it is. So Cosmo, we have a couple products. We have something called a gua sha device, and it's also a practice that is rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, but many other alternate modalities, and also a cupping device. In traditional days, they used cupping to release toxins from the body, or what is called wind.
Yeah.
And so wind, you can literally think of it. Everything in traditional medicine is rooted in nature and natural philosophies. Wind on the trees, that's how you can imagine it. When wind gets very rough, it invades your body. It's an external pathogen, and you need to dispel it somehow. And so they discovered cupping as a means to dispel wind. With wind can come many other external pathogens, because you can have a hot wind, a cold wind, a damp wind, because depending on the climate, wind carries everything with it. So then when you're expelling wind, you're expelling all the other pathogens. Those pathogens, according to TCM, show up in your body through different symptoms. And that's how acupuncturists and traditional Chinese medicine practitioners can diagnose you and treat you. So that's what cupping can do. In modern day, it's also just an amazing physical therapy tool.
Yeah.
We basically, in the early 2000s, there was a physical therapist who had a severe shoulder or back injury, couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like no therapy was working. Eventually just went to an acupuncturist. He thought it was woo-woo, which he comes from that Western ideology, and I understand it. He was also a very well-accomplished individual, and the acupuncturist put cups on him and told him stay still. Obviously, being a PT, he couldn't stay still. He started moving around, and he was like, wow, this idea of negative pressure mobility is insane, because it's like a massage, but in reverse, because a massage is compressing your soft tissue,
And this is pulling it
and
out.
this is pulling it.
I wish we had a little product demo of Cosmo. I never wanted to do cupping just because I've heard of so many practitioners hurting people, doing the wrong thing. It's pretty scary when you see people with all these bruises. They have this really cool electric vacuum, and it's self-administered, and it also has like warmth and red light, and it's pretty awesome. I know we need 2 hours to go into the stuff that we just unpacked, but we have Christian over here signaling to us that we need to go do a relay. We're here at Biocultures in the middle of Mexico.
Yeah, we are.
I guess that's what we're up to next. So, Josh, I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Until next time.
Appreciate you, Jack.